Hydra Rotation 2. We're in it, we're live, everything you need to know for maximum success. Let's get it. What up team, it's your boy MurderInc here, back again with another Hydra clan boss video. I know, RNG content, who cares, who asked? Listen, none of you did, but if you're here, you want to improve, so let me help you improve here. What has changed? Not a lot and everything. Does that make sense? Of course it doesn't, but not a lot and everything has changed here. Let's go over it. You guys already know how I do this. The affinities change, that's huge. I will go over that for sure. And what I want to do is throw in the tankiest team I can find. Don't look at this like, oh, these are the new meta. No, they're not. Trust. They're not the new meta champions. I just don't want to get one shot while I'm explaining this inside the dungeon. Torment, easy. Double C feet, easy. Let's get it. Not starting on auto for sure. So what has changed from last rotation to this rotation? Not really much, but the affinity change is huge. So we have Head of Mischief here. We all know the annoying Head of Mischief. Torment, we're all familiar with Torment. Head of Blight, new to a lot of people. If you weren't cycling through heads before, you're going to know all about this fantastic Hydra head shortly. And the Head of Wrath, which is going to be the main issue for many players here. So the key thing to note here is going to be the affinity changes. Now, one thing I want you guys to do that I've never brought up before is look at the amount of health each and every head has and calculate that against the chest you're aiming for. If it's possible for you, and it's very possible this rotation specifically, you can set a goal for how much damage you want to do based on the first 4 heads. If you've been struggling in this, you've been throwing teams together doing laughable damage in your opinion based on your account, this is a good way to kind of get around all of that. Now, one thing I just noticed here is that it looks like they made the colors of these Hydra heads to reflect the first rotation. So Torment was blue and this is a blue head, but now it's green, so it kind of, I don't know, maybe I'm going crazy, it just looks funny to me. Head of Wrath, it would have been really cool if they changed this to blue as well, but I guess Volcanic Wrath does make sense. And this guy, I don't even remember what he was last time because he was a non-issue for a lot of people. I mean, some people won't say that. But what are we doing here? This guy is going to be the problem for most people, and it's going to require the biggest change for pretty much every single team. I'm not going to say need. You can overgear this and you won't need it, but you want attack down. Why is this different than the other rotation? What head are we missing? Come on, guys, let me know. Tell me. What's the annoying head that's missing here? The Head of Decay. That guy who takes your hard-earned debuffs that you worked hard with, accuracy, all of the other stats you needed to place on your champions, he just removed them on a really short cooldown. Then he removes them on a single champion. I mean, I always call them champions. A single Hydra head. Probably the one who just devoured a champion because that's how good RNG is. And now it puts this massive shield on top of the Devour shield that's already there, which means you just restart or you wipe. So that guy's gone. I mean, he's not gone, but he's not in the main 4, which is huge because now debuffs are going to last the duration, assuming they have landed. You can extend these debuffs, they can stay on forever. So what increases significantly in priority? Block buff was already very strong. Now it's even stronger. No one's going to be getting rid of it. We don't have the Head of Suffering as well. You guys know about the Head of Suffering. He gets an extra turn burning through those debuffs very quickly. We don't have that here at all, which is the good news. So block buffs on these champions, huge, mostly because of the Head of Blight. What's the Head of Blight going to do if you're not sure? He puts this poison cloud up that makes everything a weak hit. It's really annoying, and if you get devoured, imagine trying to break out a champion in a devoured state with the poison cloud buff on the Hydra heads. You just don't want it. A way to get rid of this, like I said, block buffs and HP burn. So AoE HP burn going to be big, or single target HP burn, and you just debuff spread it with one of those champions. So this is kind of the new way to approach this since it is on this opening rotation here. Now affinities, huge thing to talk about. Duchess Lilitu has been used last rotation to lots of success. Now she's not worse now, but the Head of Wrath is a problem. I'm on Nightmare difficulty now. I didn't have a problem without attack down last time because Duchess Lilitu was strong affinity to the Head of Wrath. Now, what is her affinity to the Head of Wrath? She is weak affinity, complete opposite change here. With that being said, the Head of Wrath's crit rate is higher and it does more damage to Duchess, which is not good. If you get crit and it has attack up, you're probably gonna die, okay? Unless your gear is crazy OP. For Nightmare, I don't think you can survive a Nightmare if he has attack up and he gets a crit on Duchess, no matter what. Could be wrong, don't quote me on that, but I'm just saying from the numbers I've seen, it just doesn't seem realistic. So what do you want to do? You want someone that removes buffs. That's huge. Like I said, block buffs is good, but someone who removes buffs, because they're always placing it, and you want a backup plan, right? You don't want to place block buffs and it runs out on that one turn. There's always a 1 turn delay. You have like a 2 turn application on the target for duration of block buffs, and it's a 3 turn cooldown, right? So unless you're refreshing the cooldowns or you get that 3% resist, get rid of that from the game Plarium. It can just be a mess. You don't want his, what does he have? He has Vengeance, he has Reflect Damage, all of these things that can be terrible, but attack up's the key here. You want to get rid of that ASAP. So with that being said, things that become more viable: block buffs, AoE HP burn, which was decent before damage wise, but now it's pretty much required without block buffs. And you also have a champion that can remove buffs. Who's going to be strong? I know you guys want to know this. Who is going to be good here? I'm going to get to that in a second. I do want to finish up the key points of this team here. We still have to worry about the fears. Keep that in mind. We're going to be taking extra damage from Blight. If you've never faced Blight before, he has a mechanic where he places Leech on an AoE as well as 3 poisons. This does a lot of damage. Now the initial raw damage isn't huge, but poisons are enemy max health even on your champion, so all of this damage over time is not going to be good for anybody. And he has a debuff snap ability, kind of like Zavia, Elenarl, all of those champions. You don't want poisons on your champion if there's going to be a sequence of head turns. So like Blight goes, he uses this snap here, then Wrath goes, you're dead. Because now you're probably at 60% health, maybe 55, and then Wrath is going to get a turn. Regardless of attack down, regardless of what his buffs are, he still hits hard. If he's strong affinity and he crits you, bye-bye. You could have a Reviver that's going to be strong for sure. Leech is also, you can use Leech to your advantage. This is something I was considering before. There's a strategy where you let the Head of Mischief kind of steal continuous heal and spread it. So you're only dealing with these 4 champions, which is not a bad idea if you can sustain it. It is a bad idea if you can't, so keep that in mind here. But you can also let Leech apply and have them heal up on their own by dealing damage to your champions. Now, of course, if you have shields, it's not going to work out for you, unfortunately, but that's the basic gist of things here. The main thing here is you have to, cannot stress this enough, keep an eye on this marker here. It says 2. When this hits, what is it? 15? I'm pretty sure it's 15. If it's not 15, you guys can yell at me in the comments that, okay, it is 15. When this hits 15, damage inflicted increases by 300%. You don't have to be a mathematician to know 300% is a significant damage increase. That on top of giving this champion attack up, which is going to be applying on himself. Decrease attack on your champions isn't crazy, but these are the biggest changes that's coming into this week here. Hex now becomes more viable. I know people have been saying Hex is useless, who cares? Now we can use Hex because we don't have the annoying Head of Decay that's going to be removing it. So if you had invested in a Hex champion, you got really frustrated in the past, now might be the time to throw it back in there and say, hey, now I can just nuke down the Head of Mischief, which has many benefits. I'm going to go over that right now so I don't forget. His decapitation effect fully depletes the turn meters of all Hydra heads whenever this head is decapitated. So if you can do this properly, keyword, if you can do this properly, you can kill the Head of Wrath or the Head of Blight. They all have decently, all of these champions besides Suffering and Decay, I believe those are the 2 highest HP. Could be wrong, can fact check me on that. For the most part, these guys have pretty low health. these 4 Hydra heads. So this is a pretty good rotation in my opinion. Definitely not one of the harder ones. So if you can time this right and you can start killing off these heads and decapitating them, saving the head of mischief for last, depleting the turn meters when the heads are decapitated, you can get insane damage, pushing you to that next key threshold. This is something I don't think I talked about before because it was much harder last rotation with Decay. Just messing everything up, putting a shield on the lowest health champion. If you didn't break the shield, they healed, so it was a nightmare. Now it's much, much easier, in theory and practice, of course, if you really think it through, to start killing off all of the heads besides Head of Mischief. You wouldn't want Hex for this because you want the redirect as often as possible. Single target, of course, is going to be good in this scenario. You kill these heads, then you reduce the turn meters while they're decapitated, and you just pump damage into the decapitated heads. They're taking crazy increased damage. Your damage is going through the roof on the total damage count. It's looking beautiful for you. Now, one annoying part about this with the Hydra Head of Wrath here is his vengeance causes lots of wipes. Now, you're going to see this in your clan, hopefully not your keys, but you're going to see this. People aren't properly preparing for the Head of Wrath. They're getting one shot and you cannot restart your key. So it's already been forwarded to Plarium. They know about it. They're acknowledging that it's viable feedback to put that free regroup button that I just clicked on here after the run. So let's say you die, you see the damage you did. That should be the screen where you get an option to free regroup, not if you pause it in time. Because if you've been in this situation, it's the worst. Let's say the Hydras chain 3 turns or even 4 turns in a row because you're too slow. That means that you can't even pause it because the system's pre-calculating all the damage you're going to take, and you could be at 100% health, but you could be getting crit by all 4 of these Hydras and it can wipe you. So it can look like a great run, but you just can't pause it. The button disappears from the screen, which is like, what do I do now? So it's not the best design. It was a good idea for sure, adding that button here if you can catch it, but the fact that it's so RNG and it can be hard to catch, don't make the players suffer for that. So that's the breakdown of this. Ideally, you want to keep the same 4 heads in this rotation here. Decay, if you can deal with Decay and you're okay with him cleansing your buffs, sure. Ideally, Decay should be swapped for Blight if you do want to keep that in rotation. Head of Suffering is kind of just a pain overall. He's red affinity now, which doesn't mean too much, but he has lots of passives that increase resistance, reduces the effect of AoE damage additionally for every single head here, which means, by the way, I didn't mention this, AoE nuke champions damage goes up this rotation. That's the good news for a lot of people here. So let's get into the champions. What champion should you be looking for that can have massive value? Some of them are similar to the previous rotation that I have gone over. Krisk, yeah, but he's kind of a whale champion, so I'm not going to talk about him, but I'm not going to forget about him, okay? Krisk is good. Drexstar, very good champion here. What's so good about him? His passive of placing HP burn on the attacker when hit, very good. Resistance, if you're going for the resistance route champion, also very strong. Pretty decent base stats. Triple hit on the A1 ability for lots of Giant Slayer potential. Keep that in mind as well. And he also heals by 20% of the damage inflicted if the target is under HP burn. So all of this is strong, a lot of self-sustain there. So red champions are going to be very strong. Just looking at the affinities here, red is going to be weak to Head of Torment, which the Head of Torment does actually hit very hard. So I'm not going to completely discredit that, but if you've attacked down, red is going to be the optimal champion to use. Equal to 2 champions, strong to the Head of Wrath, who's the big boy, the damage dealer like we've already mentioned. Brogni will help as long as you can make sure the Head of Mischief isn't stealing that block buffs, putting it on himself, then spreading it. That could be bad for you if you don't have someone to remove the buffs from the enemy team, which you should, like I mentioned before. So another key point to keep in mind here, listen, ally protection is going to be important for this, but you have to be careful. Using a champion like Ursuga, using a champion like Skull Crusher, make sure you're understanding that if you use ally protection, that champion is going to take stupid damage. Stupid damage. And it's going to be hard for a lot of people to kind of power through that unless they're overgeared or they know how to mitigate damage. I recommend checking out my videos on this. I've talked about ally protection damage. You want no crit damage on ally protection champions because it takes the champion that's applying ally protection's crit damage when applying the damage multiplier to himself. A lot of players don't know that. You need to know that because it's so important. I see people building Krisk, for example. He has ally protection, really strong, continuous heal, increased defense. And they're like, why is my Chris getting one shot? I don't get it. Because they're building with 100% crit rate, crit damage necklace. They're getting some crit damage substats in where we can. Because they say, okay, well, he hits decently hard, not crazy on his A1. It is AoE. So any damage I can squeeze out, the better. No, that is not true. Because every single point of crit damage increases the amount of damage he takes once he takes a hit with that shared damage equation. Like I said, check out the video if you want more information on that for sure. Now, I want to talk about some strong champions in my opinion. Molly Tankard, strong to 2 of the heads here, equal to Torment, as well as weak to the Head of Wrath. So you have to keep that in mind, kind of the same idea as Duchess here, but you can build her strong enough, and she's a really nice passive that's worth mentioning, boosting the turn meters by 25% when hit by a boss. There are 4 bosses. This is a 1 turn cooldown, which is unfortunate. If this was no cooldown, she's not bad, but she would be way stronger. So that is what she has going for sure here. Iron Brago, kind of the same thing, gives you an overall defense boost in your whole team. Perfect uptime on increased defense, assuming it doesn't get stripped, which means resistance is going to be strong here. Now, attack down as well, which is huge. So he's kind of a key player here. Once again, he can get crit by Head of Wrath, and he's probably one of the best suited to survive him and Duchess as far as being weak affinity here. Molly, kind of a stretch, but she does have a pretty good kit here. Outside of that, and now think about the most recent events we just had. Rector Drath, even affinity on 2 of the heads, strong affinity, so she's kind of like what Duchess was last week, right? So she's strong affinity to the Head of Wrath. She is weak to Torment, and like I said, Torment does do damage, but she also has Perfect Veil everywhere in her kit. Even though it's a single target revive, it's still strong. Lots of healing, lots of resistance boosting here, so kind of like I was explaining last time, Rector Drath, good champion. And this is kind of like my point on players that if you're free to play, low spend, you should probably skip some of the 2 times and 10 times events, because a guaranteed Rector Drath, if you care about Hydra at all, is huge. Whether you have 1, 2, or 3, having 3 for this rotation, I mean, GG. I mean, you can't really say GG. It does depend quite significantly on the other champions, but single target damage dealers, and by damage dealers I mean attack down, don't know why I said that, are going to be okay. You really want an AoE attack down here, but please do not forget about attack down. It's just way too strong for this, with all of the damage coming out here from Head of Wrath and the other heads for sure. Padma, talked about Padma last week. She was a great tool for so many players here. She's going to be the same for this rotation here. Decrease accuracy, huge for resistance teams. We have an A1 that's 100% chance, if booked of course, to a place that attack down. If it's a crit, really easy to crit at your champions for the most part, depends on who you watch. Removes all buffs from the target and places them on this champion. This is going to be good pair with a Hex champion. You have Hex, Head of Mischief is targetable. Let's say you get Bad Luck, 3% chance. Now you have an attack down champion, decrease accuracy champion with a fail-safe A3 on a 3-turn cooldown, so it's not that crazy, to steal back the buffs from the Head of Mischief. So that's huge, and Padma, fantastic champion all around. Great base stats, as we just saw there anyways. So those are kind of the top picks in my opinion. Now there's going to be hundreds of champions who are going to do well. Granted, those are just the best that I saw that stand out so much further than the rest. Tanix Hateflower is someone else to consider here. She has an AoE damage reduction. She's strong affinity to the Head of Wrath once again, and she's not decreasing the damage by too much. It's not like ally protection where she probably would get one shot. It's 5%, and that can actually save your champions more than you would think. On top of that, we have an A1 decreased speed. and it heals all allies if it's under decreased speed. She doesn't apply decreased speed on that one. This is the one where she has a 50% chance of applying decreased speed on a single target, and then a 50% chance, of course, it goes up to 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, a 100% chance on a 3-turn cooldown. Most people have this champion. I mean, everyone does. It's a login reward, but and they used her for faction wars. She's fantastic there. Base stats, defense leaves something a little bit more to be desired, but going to be a strong champion overall. Decreased speed on the AoE. We have a heal. Even though it's a little bit strong, if you stack enough HP, it can be significant on this champion if they hit a target with decreased speed. And finally, this passive that I just went over here, the aura is going to be useless, of course. So those are just some of the strongest champions that I found personally. Yes, you can use champions with AoE HP burns. We did go over that. Of course, for the most part, always look at base stats of champions. That's going to matter a lot, because the better the base stats are, the easier it is for you to gear those champions. Now, if you want to test things like poisons, you can do that. AoE damage is now a lot more viable than it was in the past, so you can also do that. So there's a lot of strategies. The best teams are still going to be, I know this is going to be boring, but the best teams are still going to be the teams using Husk, teams using Royal Guard. Where are you? Here's a 2 Royal Guards, also paired with Duchess, and then probably someone like a Kaimar, and then we can use Lady Kimi to Hanorok if you're lucky enough to have her. You can also use Venus. I mean, Venus is of course going to be the strongest here, having defense down, weaken, AoE HP burn, poisons. What's not to love there? So you counter a lot of things with just a team like this. Definitely not 3 enemy max health champions. So we have a strip, all of this good stuff. I mean, you guys already know this team. This is a boring team, not very creative. It does fill all the roles, but there's tons of RNG involved. Arbiter, I know I used Arbiter last time. She's still going to be just as good. Void Affinity, so she's not weak to anybody. We have 2 turn meter boosts. We have attack up. We have an AoE heal. We reduce the duration of enemy buffs. 100% chance if booked. Your Arbiter may or may not be booked depending on how much you use her. A weaken on the A1. If you build accuracy for the A1 and the A2, that's fine. But Arbiter, she's still going to be strong. I used it with Brogni before. That same team, if you want to check out that video, is still going to be viable for this rotation. But important things to take away, like I've mentioned, attack down is huge. Survivability has a much bigger emphasis this time around than last time. But overall, it's going to be easier because you don't have this annoying head of decay, removing all of your debuffs that you need to clear the Hydra heads and all of these things. So the RNG for this time goes down for sure if you plan properly. So hopefully this video helps out a lot of you guys in your planning, because I explained, I don't know, not everything probably, but I did explain a lot here. Now, one champion that I keep looking at is Visix the Embowed. Now, turn meter gain is going to be good. Of course, she's not decreasing theirs. AoE decreased speed and ally protection can be strong. She has incredible base defense. That's good. You would have to stack health, of course. Another key point here, health is paramount for ally protection champions. Defense is good too, but health is going to be above and beyond. So all of these things together, once again, Tanix is good, but Visix, very strong champion. Everyone has her if you've progressed that far into the game and you are doing the Hydra. So this is my rundown on rotation 2, the tips, the tricks you need to know to apply to your account. Of course, not everyone's going to have the best champions that I talked about here, but I've made an overview on every single mechanic of all of these Hydra heads. You can check that video out. You just need to understand what the champions do. You need to counter them specifically based on the opening rotation of 4. Outside of that, just use RNG to your advantage. It's annoying, I know, unless you have one of the meta teams, the very few meta teams that can counter all 6 heads together, which is very hard to do. You don't need to do that for a lot of difficulties because you can't get the damage you need, kind of like I mentioned earlier in this video. But hopefully this helps you out. Let me know what you guys think. Hydra, I don't know, it's boring for a lot of people, RNG based. Some people are just skipping overall. With the new chaos, or I don't know, getting bad stats on gear doesn't seem that bad anymore, assuming you're wailing out and buying it, of course. But give me your thoughts, give me your feedback. That's going to conclude this video today. As always, guys, if you enjoy this content, smash that like button. Helps me out a lot for sure. Subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and I will see you all in my next upload.